ascribe to any part of the world. It's a global virus, and the United Nations has been concerned for a pretty long time, for decades, about creating a viable future in a world where human beings could actually live together peacefully, happily, and productively. So the United Nations International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination builds upon the 1963 Declaration of Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. So you see, if it's just one sentence, discrimination appears how many times? And this is from the United Nations Human Rights of published in 1965. So for decades, the struggle for the elimination of discrimination has been on this planet, and we are not just the only persons who are concerned about it. It's been pioneered by the United Nations, members of the United Nations, and so we are just being part of a scenario where we could, facilitate an understanding on how to deal with this very virus at the workplace. So the very essence of the CED, or the United Nations International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, is focused on four major principles or four major points. And one is that any doctrine of racial differentiation or superiority is scientifically false. There is no dispute about that. Whether you view it from a sociological perspective, or from a metaphysical perspective, or from a qualitative, a quantitative, or mixed methods approach, the basic, a pivot of the issue is that, differentiation based on superiority is simply something that is not really real, and it's condemnable because it is a social vice which inhibits people's happiness and their sustainable development. Two, superiority or hatred violates fundamental human rights. Endanger friendly relations amongst peoples, communities, families, cooperations among international peace units. Discrimination is there, racial discrimination is there. We're no longer going to feel comfortable in what we are doing, in the relationships that we have established with people over time. And so this is a concern for, for all residents of this global village. Three, racial discrimination impacts not only on the victim, but it does have some adverse effects also on the perpetrator. So the United Nations aims for a global village that is free of racial discrimination. Why? Because it creates some dissension in society. Racial discrimination basically violates human rights, and so we should understand that it is a crime. It violates people's human rights, so it's a crime. And so what do people do when they know that something is criminal or some act is criminal? They try to avoid it. And that is something that we should think about. And that basically concerns all of us because we don't want to become criminals. We don't want to be involved in whatever. So the important factor is that we need to be able to place ourselves at a vantage position where we have a chance to be able to see how our leadership at the workplace generates some strategies to be able to deal with this virus. I mean, it's like the COVID-19 virus. It has wreaked havoc on so many lives. It has sent so many people to the abode of death. And so we have to know how dangerous this very virus is and be part of the scheme or part of the agenda to be able to fight it. So then there are four ways that we could discriminate against someone. One is direct discrimination, which occurs when someone treats us in a very unpleasant ways comparatively to how they will treat others because of the color of your skin or because of your ethnic origin or because you are not able to be part of an arena which favors that person's ideals. Second is indirect discrimination. And indirect discrimination occurs at the workplace or organization when an organization or at your workplace, your policies are counterproductive to the advantage of everyone or every ethnic group. If the policies at your workplace enable favoritism to a particular cause, then that basically implies that the organization is embarking on indirect discrimination, indirect racial discrimination. The third segment of racial discrimination is harassment. Harassment occurs when someone humiliates you because of your race. And victimization basically implies that you support an anti-racial discrimination ideology and you are seen as a threat to the perpetration of racial discrimination and you're victimized. So those are the four different types of racial discrimination. And with all this negative upsurge, I mean, we all are witnesses, or we were all witnesses to what happened recently, in the whole global village, where there was so much of protest. It started in the US with the killing of a black man and by a white man. And, the whole world, there was chaos, there was riot, there was protest, all over the globe. I was shocked how after the protest in the US, it spiraled. It became like a viral video clip. It goes around all over the world. If you check any news or any publication, you see how this country, they are protesting. This country, they are on the streets. That country, they are on the streets. So it is something that affects the whole of the global society. And therefore, we are trying to see how we are becoming prone to imbibe a culture of post-conventional consciousness. Post-conventional consciousness means that we know this violates the fundamental principles of human rights, and we resist the temptation to be a part of that. Professor Lawrence Colbeck from Harvard University developed this the theory of moral reasoning. And post-conventional morality or post-conventional consciousness is that stage of Colbeck's moral development theory, or the stage where the person says, no, I am not going to be part of it. I'm not going to do it. Sometimes some children are even born with post-conventional consciousness. Because I remember one of my friends, he's a white guy, he's an elderly guy, when I was in New Jersey about a decade or so ago. He told me a story. He was taking me to the airport. I was traveling for the conference. And he was taking me to the airport. And he told me a story how, when he was a kid, his father had told him, hey boy, you can pick something in a mall. There's nothing wrong in that, as long as you don't get caught. So he thought, wait a minute. I don't, as a child, he told me, no, he didn't subscribe to what the advice that his father was, giving to him. So there are some children, there are kids who are even born with that type of consciousness. Even if you are a parent, you can't pressurize them doing the wrong thing. And so the whole idea is that if people in general on the planet can try to attain that post-conventional consciousness, racial discrimination will be a thing of the past, will be something of past history. Unfortunately, we're struggling. We're not on that platform. And so we get involved somehow or the other in discrimination against other people based on the color of the skin, based on their ethnic origin, or based on the type of association that they're in, based on how they're relating with people of different ethnic background, or how they help in trying to minimize that virus or the containment of that virus. Yes, next flip. So definition of concepts. Racial discrimination is treating a person less favorable than another person in a similar situation because of their race, color, distance, national or ethnic origin. And this definition is excerpt from the United Nations Human Rights 1965. I like to make references because as scholars, we don't claim to be the reservoir of all knowledge. And so there's a difference between someone who's a scholar who is presenting a talk and someone who is not. Because sometimes I see presentations of people, or I see some PowerPoints of some very good topics, but you don't see any reference. So we don't do that in scholarship because there is what we call attribution. We give to Caesar what is for Caesar. People, we have climbed on people's soldiers, so we have to give them that respect. They make the attribution. I will also talk about sonic therapeutic intervention, and so that's one of the reasons why I put that in the definition here, because a number of people are not familiar with that terminology. Sonic therapeutic intervention is a process of self-administered vocalization of transcendental sound vibrations for internalized positive change. And racial justice leadership, I refer to it as the alignment of individual and group values, mission, actions, structures, and systems around a common understanding and adherence to workplace racial equity. Next slide. The problem statement. Well, if we have to give a talk or we have to research on a subject matter or topic, What is the problem? So here is an evidence of some problem. 34% of the over 80,000 workplace discrimination charges filed in 2017 were racial based or were race based or were racial discrimination. And this is a reference from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in the United States. Now, challenges to workplace racial justice leadership. That is a problem. Challenges is a problem. There's a problem there. Now, something before it becomes a problem, it was an issue. You see, sometimes we have an issue to deal with. We don't deal with it. And then later, it brews up or it develops into a problem. And if it's as a problem, if we don't deal with the problem, that's why we're trying to deal with it. If you don't deal with the problem, it will escalate to a crisis. And when there's a crisis, then there's a topsy-turvy. So the challenges to workplace racial justice leadership. I identify one of the challenges as identity crisis. What does identity crisis mean? I'll come to that. Low self-control, phenomenological mindset. And I have the reference of phenomenological mindset, Prabhupada 1986. And supremacy. So there are a number of challenges or a number of issues or problems that have to that are like an impediment to racial justice leadership, and I've just identified these four for us to discuss. Identity crisis means that I am thinking I'm a white man, I'm thinking I'm a black man, I'm a green man, I'm a yellow man, or I'm an African, I'm a South African, I'm an Indian, I'm an American, I'm a Caucasian. And so these are the type of boxes that we fit ourselves into, or the people that we are serving fit ourselves into. And so when we are boxed into this type of compartments, and we identify with these compartments, there's a problem. I'm in a particular body. I say I because I'm not a physical body. If you actually analyze this physical body properly, you'll find that I have a mind, I have ego, I have, my physical organs, eyes, head, working senses, knowledge acquiring senses. So, and when I sleep, I have some experiences. I find myself like, look, I'm in a village here called Vrindavan in India. I left New York to come to India for some for a pilgrimage, but then I ended up being caught up with the coronavirus lockdown in India. So I've been here for about 6 months. So just because I'm here 6 months does not make me an Indian. And so this identity crisis or false identification with our physical tablet, one of the major problems, one of the major challenges to racial justice leadership. This is one of the major causes of racial discrimination, because we as conditioned entities, I say we condition. So let me explain that terminology, that word. Condition. Professor Pavlov, he developed, a German professor, psychologist, he developed this concept of condition. He conditioned a dog. He put a dog in a cage, and each time he wants to feed the dog, he will ring the bell, and then they'll bring the food. So the dog got conditioned to the idea of associating a ringing of a bell, a sound of a bell, with food. And so Professor Pavlov, when when he rang the bell, and although the food was not there, the dog was salivating because the dog get conditioned for it. So we are also conditioned to identify with our physical existence, but we are not only the physical existence. We are also metaphysical. We are beyond the metaphysics of our being. We are also anti-material or spiritual entities. And so that is being neglected. The living force is being neglected. And so we identify with the physical existence, physical body. And so it's just a common thing. When you identify with the physical body, if you are a Caucasian, you're a white man, you see another white man, it becomes your brother. If you identify with the body, you're an Indian lady, you see another Indian lady, immediately, that becomes your sister. It becomes to be close to that person. But in reality, whether you're an Indian, whether you're an African, you're a European, or an American, look at the four basic things that all of these ethnic people from these ethnic groups do: eating, sleeping, mating, sex, and fighting. We all do that, whether you have a white body, a black body, a green body, a yellow body, whatever. So we should take time and analyze our situation. And when we analyze it properly, we realize that we are a three-dimensional entity. We have this physical body made up of chemicals. But we also have experienced our dream state. And that dream state basically is letting us understand that we are not just this physical body only. And even beyond that dream body is our real personality. And so everybody is that real personality, but we have denied ourselves of that pristine. We have identified with our physical bodily carcass, and therefore we are only relating to people based on that physical phase of our existence, undermining our Christian identity. That is one of the major causes of racial discrimination. That's one of the major causes of the discrimination based on the skin color. Now, like I mentioned, discrimination is also right in the family based on the color of the skin. I had a friend, I don't want to mention the city. So, we're discussing. And he told me it's an Indian body, to be precise. That was in America. He told me how when he was born, his skin was dark, and he was neglected by his father. And that trauma is still living with that trauma till today. So even your own parents can go to the extent of discriminating against you because your skin is not light enough. So this is not something that some historiography, but it's something I encountered the person. It's one of the research I was conducting. He told me his story. So we should not think. In other words, this racial discrimination or discrimination based on skin color or ethnic background, it is something that is even in our family. So we can't point accusing fingers to people who are racial, because even within our own domestic settings, racial discrimination is there. But that does not mean that we should not fight against it. And The other part that I want to touch also is low self-control. This is a challenge to racial justice leadership. How is it a challenge? Because someone who has low self-control will always become a victim of circumstance. Why? Because they will not be able to control the urge to discriminate against someone. And according to Gottfriedson and Hitchie, who developed the general theory of crime and criminology, these two scholars are very prominent. So according to Gottfriedson and Hitchie, they say from their general theory of crime and criminology, they say that all crimes, and keep in mind that racial discrimination is a crime. Let's say Gottfriedson and Hitchie, they assert that all crimes and antisocial behavior are due to low self-control. You know, one of these classical scholars of the Asian Vedic tradition, Rupa Goswami, also mentioned that in one of his research work is called, Nature of Instruction. And in that, he mentioned how we have these urges, and except we are able to control all of these urges, we could always become a victim of circumstance. We could become a criminal. We could become very nice people now, and then in next moment, we become involved in behaviors that are inordinate, behaviors that are, a violation to other people's fundamental human rights. And so it is important for us to understand how low self-control impacts on us negatively. So let's understand this point. If we understand deeply what is causing all of this racial discrimination, then it becomes easy to tackle it. See, I've read a lot of literature review on racial discrimination, and in most cases, the things they are talking, they don't have a substance with the main issue of racial discrimination. And so another issue here is criminological mindset. Criminological mindset, I got it from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami's writings, Prabhupada. And he addressed how this mindset is an impediment to inclusion, diversity, and equity. Because in this type of mindset, the person sees the whole world as object of his enjoyment. He sees everyone who is trying to become progressive as his competitor, and he must have to suppress them. Or possibly, he could even arrange for him to be exterminated. And so from logical mindset, and I mentioned, I brought up this point in one of my research publications in the Journal of Financial Crime. How this is one of the major causes of leaders becoming involved in crimes. Because they're thinking that they own the world, they are the enjoyers, they are very powerful, and so they can do anything and everything and go scot-free. But it doesn't work like that. Look at even the police officer who killed Floyd. He was thinking, I'm a police guy. This is from logical mindset. I'm the controller. I'm powerful. Who can stop me? Even if some of his colleagues we are asking him to mellow down. No. He's a cop. So who can check it? So this type of controllership mindset, which is integrated with false proprietorship, is a major hindrance to or the manager or the project manager is thinking, I am the controller. I am powerful. I control all of you. And if I don't like you, I can devise a means to kill you. That's exactly what our police guy did. So philosophical mindset is another serious setback in the fight of the United Nations and all of us against racial discrimination. And the last one I want to mention here is supremacism. Supremacism is an ideology where a person thinks because of his ethnic origin or because of the color of his skin or because of the religion that he's prosecuting or is pursuing or is practicing, he is superior to everyone else. And he is supposed to control everyone else and dictate to them. And that's very much dominant in America. So, we'll go to the next slide. The purpose of this study, or the purpose of this webinar, is to explore strategies to be able to, that will enable a workplace equity. Because without proper strategies in place, if we don't implement strategies that will facilitate racial equality in a workplace, some people will always become victims of circumstances. And so, yeah, the idea, why is it necessary? Because if the studies available right now don't very much generate strategies that will create an enduring racial equity. In most cases, we're just on the surface. So, go to the next slide. Research question. Well, you see, if we have to discuss on anything, what is our research question? In other words, that is one of the elements that will build up on that the research that will revolve around. What is the leaders implement to de-escalate racial discrimination? What are those intergenerational strategies that workplace leaders are effectively implementing to be able to create sanity in the workplace devoid of racial discrimination? Next slide. A method or methodology. This is a qualitative study using desktop analysis or documentary analysis. The keywords are workplace racial discrimination, effective leadership, racial equality. Next slide. The data collection and analysis. You know, every study, every presentation, research that you conduct, you have to collect data. And the data collection and analysis are important. They're part of the pivot of that study, of your presentation. So the process of how do we get the information that we now discuss through document review. And how do we get those documents? We searched on different databases like Elsevier, Toria database, Business Talk, Complete Premier, Emerald, ProQuest, EBSO, PubMed, Science Direct, Google, so many databases that we were able to reach out to be able to get or gather some information or data to share with you on this topic. Next slide. Now, what was the result? What did we find after scrutinizing all of those things? What the factors that emerge from this analysis is that if the leaders, as well as the employees, cultivate a culture of post-conventional morality, post-conventional consciousness in the workplace, there will not be any iota of racial discrimination, because majority of people in the workplace, the employer, the employees, they know racial discrimination is a violation of fundamental human rights. And so, who in his proper consciousness will want to violate anyone's fundamental rights? Of course, there are some people who take pleasure in doing that, but the point is, people are doing that in the workplace, they should be reported. They should be approached so that you could engage them in, challenging discussion, difficult discussion. There should be a space in a workplace for, a challenging discussion, because no one is a slave in the workplace. So one of those things that, one of the strategies that emerged is that racial discriminators, they should be approached and engage them in discussions. They should be reported, because it is against the law. And practically all over the world, in all countries, it's against the law. And another strategy that emerged is macroaggression. There is macroaggression and there is micro, small, miniature aggression. And that in most cases is minimized. People don't address it. But it's like you see a smoke. If you don't deal with that smoke, a smoldering of fire, if you don't deal with it, it could engulf the whole house. So addressing microaggression promptly is very important. Now, sonic therapeutic intervention. The practice of sonic therapeutic intervention is important in dealing with racial discrimination. Why? Because this process of sonic therapeutic intervention, it helps to cleanse the dirty mirror of the heart of the conditioned soul. And in that way, the living entity or the embodied soul becomes purified. And he could then see things clearly. He or she will no longer be discriminated against people based on gender, age, or race. And that is because of the purity. Sometimes, in psychology, we have something we call a pathological state of consciousness. If someone is having a pathological state of consciousness, they're not in their right thinking. So they need to go and see a psychiatrist for some treatment. Now, I tell you, whether you believe it or not, and you could Google on the web, you search, how many people are having issues at work? They are having issues at work because they don't have proper behavior, because they have implicit pathological state of consciousness. And so the sonic therapeutic intervention helps to purify the living entities or the embodied soul. And you can become, a saintly person and be in the workplace. And if you don't come to work for one day, your colleagues are restless. They were asking, where is Mr. John? Where is this person? Where is he? Because you are be relating with them with a sense of social sanity without any discrimination. So I put this is a challenge to all of you. If you are if you are on the bandwagon of anti or anti-racial discrimination, you should ask yourself, okay, if you are a black man, who are the closest friends to you? If you are a white man and you are against racial discrimination, who are the closest friends to you? If you are a green person, if you have a green color skin, and you are against racial discrimination, who are who are your closest friends? Or who are your distant friends? This could be just measure. We are away from this mindset of identifying with the color of our skin. So, sonic therapeutic intervention helps us to be able to have a higher perception of a higher reality and to be able to realize the higher self in no course of time. Now, one of the strategies that emerge also is promoting workplace equity through our social networks. These days and time, the digitalization is very helpful. And if you feel bad about something, you can share it on your social networks. You can let people know, your friends, your connections know that, I'm a fan of this very ideology, or I follow this type of ideology, and this is my modus operandi, and this is my modus vivendi, so that your friends or people in your circle of friends, they know where you belong. And then that could create some influence, positive influence on people around you, because, tell me your friend, and, I will tell you who you are. Or even by dint of association, people could become transformed. They could transform their thoughts and their ideas and their belief system and their values. So, social networking is a very powerful tool these days, and we could use this to transform the world from a world of social injustice, racial injustice, to a world where there is a total inclusion despite the diversity. Now, the other point that we discovered in the process of this analysis is that employees in organizations, they need to be trained in the Racial Discrimination Act. Because I've seen in places like in Australia, in America, a number of people, so many people have paid so much money based on compensation because they either knowingly or unknowingly racially discriminated against someone. And so then the person, he spoke out or she spoke out and then reported it. And in some cases, people lost their jobs. In some cases, they pay heavy money for compensation. So we have to know what is going on around us and utilize the tools that we're sharing with you to be able to make a difference. So education and training of employees is important so that they don't jump the gun, they don't go and, abuse someone or racially despise someone without, and then they come to say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I mean, like Amy Cooper in New York, the white lady, she went to the park, and there was this black guy who was a watcher at the park, and he gave him advice about her dog, and because of that, that general tendency, either phenomenological mindset or supremacism or low self-control or identity crisis, either of that or a group of that. So she couldn't deal with it. She couldn't contain herself. She called the cops. And then this guy was, video recorded. That's a good strategy, If someone if someone is engaging in acts of racial discrimination, you should have some evidence. If you have some evidence, they will not, because in a number of cases, when the report comes, the person denies because the victim does not have an evidence. There's no supporting evidence. But in most cases, they deal with it whether they have supporting evidence or not. But it is important to have, for workers to have supporting evidence when they perceive that someone is discriminating against directly, indirectly, harassing, or victimizing. And that one of the ways to have an evidence, if the communication is through email, don't delete those emails. You just save them up. I remember when I was doing my PhD, so I had I had 3 professors who were on my dissertation committee, and all of them were white. So one of them, the methodologist, he was like, he delayed me like for 1 year because he would give contradictory reviews. I was saving all of those contradictory reviews. Because also being a black man, if you do me some type of things, the very next moment I could think, oh, you're treating me that because because I'm a black guy. So I saved these contradictory reviews, and then I didn't like what happened. So I reported to the dissertation chair, and then he said, "Oh, man, he didn't see anything wrong with it. The chair didn't see anything wrong with it." So I took up the matter. I reported to my academic advisor, and my academic advisor gave me some ideas on what to do to siphon the information to the program director. And then later on, the chair of my he forwarded my report to the program director. So the program director sent one professor. He had 3 doctorates. He had 3 doctorates. He's ready to placate me. So this professor, he told me he will be part of my committee, and he will he will partake in everything. So I should not worry whenever there is when there are any type of perceived contradictions from my methodologies, he will be able to rectify it. So I was already tired of the guy. For 1 year, he delayed me. So I told that professor, the guy had 3 doctorates. I told him, "Excuse me, sir, I appreciate that you want to help, but that guy has really traumatized me, and I need another methodology." I was just open to him. I didn't feel shy. I was just open to him. But that's a bad record for the professor. And he told me Then he showed me the avenue, the way on how to go about it. So I filed my complaint and they removed that proposal. So one could say, well, you're a devotee, why don't you tolerate? Yeah, I'm a human being with emotion. And I have an objective of being in the school, to pursue a doctorate. It was an instruction given to me by my spiritual master. And here someone is trying to be a nuisance, trying to checkmate me from the progress that I should make. So I perceived that he was just, trying to be funny. So I took up the matter and then got him out. So don't think, well, I have to be a good guy and someone is racially discriminated against me. I just have to tolerate because, tolerance is the watchword of the 21st century. Good for you. But I tell you, if you don't take an action about what is transparent in your own workplace, you may become frustrated and perhaps they may even kick you out of the job. So when you perceive or when you see signs of either direct or indirect signs of racial discrimination, you try to see, you consult, you see it as a case of emergency. See the urgency in it, because this has engulfed the whole world, and the whole world is suffocating because of racial discrimination. Wars have been fought based on this. So we have to see how we are becoming an instrument of positive change in facilitating the endeavor of the United Nations to eliminate racial discrimination in a global village. So far, we discussed on the results, and let's go to the next slide. The next slide. So, social change implications. Social change is the enhancement of human or social conditions by promoting the development of individuals, communities, and organizations. So what is the implication of this study on social change? So positive social change, the study results has the potential to facilitate a positive social change through the implementation of workplace racial equity strategies. Next slide. Conclusion. Racial discrimination violates fundamental human rights. Post-conventional consciousness, reporting, social media platform utilization, and effective leadership facilitate workplace racial justice. Meditation of sonic therapeutic intervention and understanding of one's present identity enhances workers' emotional courage to speak out about their experiences on racial discrimination. So, I have some references, and one of them is Brandt, Zellstrom, and Anderson, Transformational Change by a post-conventional leader. That was published in the Leadership and Organizational Development Journal. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, 2018, release. That was the release of the fiscal year enforcement and litigation data. And O'Kais and Griffin, 2015, eliciting positive social change, marketing capacity to drive pro-social behaviors. That was published in Journal of Marketing Intelligence and Planning. And Prabhupada, ACBS, 1986, Bhagavad Gita as it is. And then the very last one, United Nations Human Rights, 1965. These are classical works, classical references. So This was International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. So we come to the end of the talk. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much for participating in this webinar. You have my website there. You have my email. You feel free. I'm a liberal guy. Feel free to reach out to me if you have some questions, some comments. And we're going to be having other webinars. This is a webinar, so this is just the beginning. So if you feel free to ask any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vasudev Das. I'm sure we could all, share the same sentiments of it being very informative and helpful in order to, break down the discrimination amongst us. So we do have a few questions. I don't know if there's any live questions at the moment. If there are, can you please either raise your hand or send us a message in the chat box. Let's take live questions first. I do have a few others that participants have sent me privately, but let's do live questions first. So yeah, please raise your hand and we will tell you when to unmute. Okay, it doesn't seem to be any live questions. So we do have two questions that participants have posed to us. The first one is, how can I connect and understand the needs of people around me in daily life?
That's a good question. I thank the person who asked this question. How you can connect to people, the needs of people around you, by getting close to the person. If we get close to the person, then we can understand what challenges they're facing in their lives and how we can help them. And so, important thing is to be able to create relationships. In our workplaces, we should create relationships because we don't know who is going to help us at the time that we needed the help the most. And so it's a good mindset. So we have to get close to people and then create relationship with them, be responsible, be caring, be supportive, and they will open up to you. They will open up to you about the challenges they are facing. As soon as you get close to people and you become friendly, they realize you are someone they can confide their challenges to. Why not? So it's a good question. And then the bottom line is we try to connect with people. We get close to them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vasudev. So the next question is a bit of a lengthy one, but please let me know if you'd like me to repeat it. It says,
Okay.
a recent study quantifying the genetic consequences of the transatlantic slave trade in Americas, there's also a reference, indicates the extent to which the African genome is mixed into the white American one. In spite of this mixture, racism is still systematically embedded in the United States institutional way of life. This is also true in post-colonial Africa, where black-on-black violence is prominent. In this light, how can institutions of capitalism, such as for-profit corporations, where discrimination on class is inherent to capitalism, ever cope to equip its leaders and participants with the necessary cultural shift required to defeat this multi-headed monster of bodily discrimination?
Yeah, it's a nice question, long one. But at the bottom line is we can't eliminate racial discrimination completely. I mean, like you mentioned, like the person who asked the question mentioned, even in the family, there is racial discrimination. So we can't eliminate it completely because if it's not even outside there, it's in the family. If it's not in the country, it's in the community. But we can do our part by being a good example for others. And that's why I mentioned that the fundamental principle is that we have chosen to identify with the body. We have chosen to identify with the body. And so that identification is not really helping us because it creates dissension in society. It creates dichotomy in society. So this is where the researchers fail to address. You don't see research work on racial discrimination. They're talking about crisis identity or false identification. But that is the main problem. If even in the same country, you're from this tribe or that county or from the other county, it becomes a subgroup. And then, the cooperation you get from this other county of people is not as intense as the one that the county that where you're residing. So the identification based on ephemerality or environment is not helping us. And so people should be inculcated with a knowledge of the higher self. The knowledge of the higher self. If people are cultured in the knowledge of the higher self, then discrimination will be mitigated. Otherwise, we may make laws. We may generate, but I mean, like somebody in one of his papers, he said, racial discrimination is against the law. It's a crime. But it goes on anyway. I mean, it's like, listen, look at it. If you relate it to actual crime, then you see that we are at a very challenging point. I remember, I think I was mentioning this in one of the talks that I had recently. And of the teenagers, I think a fourth grader or something like that, in the country where I was living with my parents, a military regime, and armed robbery was, if you're found guilty or prosecuted of a robbery and found guilty, the outcome is public execution. So as a kid, as a fourth grader, I was intrigued, about public execution. So I went to witness it. I sneaked out from the house. I didn't tell my dad. I just sneaked out. I went to the stadium. So I was with my friends. We are witnessing this armed robbers. When we are leaving the stadium, at the gate, the police, the cops apprehended someone who was picking pocket from another port. Even after seeing that armed robbers, thieves, criminals have been executed, that did not checkmate him. That does not create a deterrent. So even punishment does not create a deterrent, except people become cleansed from their pathological state of consciousness. Except people become from pathological state of consciousness. And so that is what brought in the concept of the intervention, sonic therapeutic intervention. And I know a number of people who are involved in self-administration of sonic therapeutic intervention, mainly in the Indian subcontinent. You know, we have these different groups, and one of them, they embark very much on 32 syllable mantra that they always will recite. And you see that their lives are not the same. They hardly will get involved in crime. And so if people want to be free from this mindset of relegating people to the background based on their ethnic origin or the color of their skin, I mean, we need to be purified at heart. Because even with all of the laws, people are being put to jail. People are being persecuted. They're being punished for all of this type of, violations of human rights. But the violation goes on anyway. It doesn't really create a deterrent for most people. And that is how conditioning works. I mean, it's like the dog. I gave the example. The food was not there. The bell was rung. But because the dog is conditioned to ringing of the bell, associating the ringing of the bell with food. So the dog will start salivating when even food is not there. So we are also conditioned. And so even after seeing someone being punished for racial discrimination, we still engage in racial discrimination. In one of the famous classical dialogues between Generalissimo and his mentor, in the classical Vedic literature, the Generalissimo that asked, why is it that I'm acting against my better judgment? Why am I being forced to do things that are inordinate, that are against the law? And so these secrets are there in some classical literature. And so what we need to do is to be able to investigate how we can go beyond, we can get out from our comfort zone and become enablers of positive change as far as racial discrimination is concerned. Without being able to become a good example for ourselves. And some of us, we may even advocate racial discrimination. And then, even in our organizations, we are discriminating against other people. So to speak about racial discrimination is one thing, and to be able to, in America, we say, walk your talk. We have to also, we have a responsibility to walk our talk if we are advocates of racial discrimination, or even discrimination of any sort, whether it's gender, age, sex, whatever. So the advocates, they have a challenge. And so the whole of this talk is grounded in the leader being the pilot, or being the fulcrum, or an enabler of positive change as far as racial discrimination is concerned. If the leader is very effective, is very tough, is very strong, he will or she will implement strategies that will facilitate elimination or minimization or mitigation of or de-escalation of racial discrimination. So yes, the researches, I've also seen several researches, biological based, neuroscientific based, but all of them they miss the whole point. They miss this fundamental principle of why people are embarking on racial discrimination even after knowing that it is bad. So we have to look at how we are becoming instruments in creating a viable future and understanding that just by advocacy alone, we will not be able to solve this problem. We need to embark on activities that will help to cleanse the dirty mirror of our heart so that we can become a genuine offerer of peace and love based on values, based on a common denominator. And that fact is that, we belong to one global family. Look, the four things that everyone does, look at it, even the animal. And so if we don't go down to that very fundamental principle and to be able to rise above the bodily platform, it is very difficult to help ourselves and to help our communities, to help the world in creating a positive change in the attempt to eliminate racial discrimination. So yeah, biological principles are there. The hormones in our system, they work from parent to child. And if someone, look at one of the cases in America, there was this black guy, he was jogging, and he was jogging past the place, and then some white guys came after him. And they shot him to death. And even his own father, there were two guys there. The son was the one who shot him to death. The father just retired not long ago as a prosecutor for decades in that very area, that very vicinity. So prosecutor means he knows. He knows this is against the law. And now they've been charged for hate crime. And that's a very serious thing. So if it's not just a challenging thing, a prosecutor, just recently retired prosecutor, will not be involved. And so people may know it, and they act against the better judge. And so there is an emotion that is described in classical Vedic literature as loss. This loss propels the living entity to act against the better judgment. But that very loss could be transformed into love for humanity by sonic therapeutic intervention. So these are the facts. Look, I have also been a practitioner of sonic therapeutic intervention. And I move around in the whole world. Most of my friends are white. Most of my friends are Indian bodies. I really don't have many black friends. So most of my friends are Europeans. So the point is that just advocacy alone is not going to help much. Individually, we have to see how we are creating a personal transformation in our lives. And then that will spill on to positively influence other people. Look, when the most powerful person on the planet is a victim, most powerful person on the planet orders people to leave the country People were born in that very country because their color, their ethnic origin or whatever, they're not of the same color of skin. They're not the same skin color. So yeah, it is a challenge. But we can make a difference. We should start with ourselves and be an object of positive change by transforming. Mahatma Gandhi said the change we want in the world, we should start with us. So yeah, we have to purify our existence, and we can help to change the world. Otherwise, no. Any other comments or questions?
Dr. Vasudev Das, there's been a lot of appreciation coming through, I think, to me privately. I think everyone has, one of our participants, Kiara, wanted to extend her thanks to you, as it was very insightful. So, and I'm sure there's many others who feel the same way. We've come to the end of our questions. So yeah, we have Dixon saying thank you very much for this wonderful talk. Dixon is from the US and is currently at work. So thank you very much for joining us. Yes, Dr. Vasudev Das, I think we are good in terms of questions. Would you like to? Okay.
Priya
Yes. Balaram.
Is it okay if I ask one question?
Sure.
One last question. So, Doctor, you mentioned sonic therapeutic intervention, and I think right at the end, as you were answering this last question, you kind of alluded to the question that I had in mind. So you mentioned the sonic therapeutic intervention as a strategy of implementing de-escalation of racial discrimination. And in your conclusion slide, I think it was, you said that it helps to speak out. You also spoke earlier about the idea of low self-control causing people to become a victim of circumstance. So I was just wondering if sonic therapeutic intervention could also help with low self-control and how that would be possible.
Okay, that's a nice question. A simple answer is yes. And in one of my research that was published in the Journal of Financial Crime in London, I used this sonic therapeutic intervention as one of the frameworks. So I used sonic therapeutic intervention and general theory of crime as a framework because it has to do with kleptocrats, stealing by hook or crook, by the top shot, by the politicians, not with gun, with pen and a brain. That's kleptocracy. And so, in that very research, I actually utilized this sonic therapeutic intervention, and the editors, they very much liked it. And you know what? When I submitted that research, they didn't remove the editors. No, it's not difficult for you to send a research paper to a very reputable peer-reviewed journal in the management sciences, and they don't tell you correct this, do this, do this. No, they hook, line, and sinker. They didn't remove a dot. They say we are publishing it as it is. So why was that possible? Because when I use these two frameworks, it was to support each other. I use the sonic therapeutic intervention in framing a response or an answer to the question of kleptocrats. Now, I use the Godfrey's general theory of crime as a framework to present why people are committing a crime when they have low self-control. Even if you punish them, if even you shoot them to death, no, that is not going to help. The next moment, another person will be involved in that in crime again. So yeah, sonic therapeutic intervention facilitates a positive change with low self-control. It promotes one of the basic fundamental elements with sonic therapeutic intervention is that it promotes high self-control. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If there are any more questions, please do unmute yourself. I think this has been a very valuable session. So thank you very much, Dr. Vasudev Das. And we really look forward to the upcoming webinar series. And if any of our participants have any suggestions, please do send it to us. We're also going to send you Dr. Vasudev Das's contact details. So yes, please do share that. I see we have Veronica wanting to say something. Veronica,
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
I just want to thank for the class. It was very wonderful class, and it was very enlightening for me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Veronica. And Miraj, if you'd like to conclude, you're welcome to. I'm not sure if there's anything else. Oh, we have Tabena. Hi, Tabena. You can say something to Miraj.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Hare Krishna Maharaj. I really enjoy your presentation, your lecture. I'm really thinking in relationship with where we are presently. I'm speaking from the point of view of a Nigerian who lives in Nigeria. We're talking about racial discrimination. In our country, we face something different. Tribalism, discrimination based on where one comes from. What you've lived here. So what do you have to say? How can we apply the technologies and the strategies you presented in your lecture in addressing this fundamental problem in Nigeria, which is actually very, in fact, some people is
I couldn't hear anything because it was wobbling.
Yeah. I think your connection is not too good. If you don't mind, you can send us the question via the chat. And we can also get Dr. Vasudev Das to respond to you, even by email. If you have questions, you're welcome to send them to the email address that I've popped in the chat. Okay.
All right.
On that note, we'd really like to pass our sincere gratitude to you, Dr. Vasudev Das, for your time. I know that you are in India at the moment, so it's very late there. So thank you very much for extending yourself in this way. And like I said, we look forward to to more webinars coming up. And thank you everyone who joined in. And please, do reach out to us with any, topics that you would like to be addressed. We can try to see if Dr. Vasudev Das can accommodate us with his research, on those specific topics. And from my side, it's the evening in South Africa, so I'd like to wish everyone, a good day for those who are calling in from America, and a good night to everyone in South Africa and wherever else in the world you're tuning in from. So yes.
Thank you everyone for participating in this webinar. we want you to feel free to reach out to us, to the organizers of the webinar. You feel free to suggest other topics that you may want us to discuss, or you may want us to research and share with you. Right now, I have a congested workload, but I'm very much available to be able to, help in facilitating this program, this talks. So we want to see how we can do another webinar that addresses issues. So thank you very much for participating. Thank you and good night.